The People's Business is made possible by our partners, Solar Dynamics, the most efficient energy systems.
Good evening and welcome to a very special edition of the People's Business. Tonight we're talking sports and in particular Paris 2024. We are talking about Team Barbados, 12 days away from the 33rd Olympiad in Paris, France. Only last week the Barbados team was announced, and tonight we're going to talk all about the 4 athletes representing Barbados, and we're going to get into the meat of the matter as to how our representation is expected to go in Paris. Joining me in the People's Business tonight is Mrs. Gail Craig Archer. She is the Senior Office Administrator at the Barbados Olympic Association, but also she's going to wear the hat sitting in for the chef de mission, Mr. Burke, who left for Paris only today. So Gail, good evening to you.
Good evening.
And thank you so much for joining us. Also with me is Dr. June Caddle. She's the first Vice President of the Athletics Association of Barbados. Of course, Barbados will be represented by 2 athletes at the Olympiad. Good evening to you, Dr. Caddle.
A very good evening to you. A slight correction. I'm actually the second vice president.
Oh, thank you so much for that correction. Thank you. So the second Vice
No
President
problem.
of the Athletics Association of Barbados.
Yes.
Also joining me, Mr. Robert Armstrong. He's the President of the Barbados Aquatics Sports Association. Swimming will be represented yet again. They have 1 athlete on the team. Good evening to you, Robert.
Good evening, Amber, and good evening to the panel.
And of course, not last but by no means least, Mr. Michael Jules, track and field analyst, but I'm going to call him everything sports. He's going to give us the round up view of everything tonight. Good evening to you, Mr. Jules.
Good evening to you, Anne-Marie. Good evening to the esteemed panelists.
Yes, definitely. So don't you go anywhere. We'll be right back as we talk about Paris 2024 Team Barbados on tonight's People's Business. And welcome back to the People's Business tonight. As I mentioned, we would have been speaking about Paris 2024 and Team Barbados. Now, I'm mentioning Team Barbados, but who are those athletes? We have 4 persons representing Barbados. In track and field, Sade Williams, she'll be representing us in the women's 400 meters event. In the women's 100 meters, there is Tristan Eveling. And then in swimming, we have Jack Kirby, and triathlon, Matthew Wright. So those are our 4 athletes representing Barbados at the 33rd Olympiad. Now, Gail, I'm going to go to you first because obviously the team has to be managed in some way, and this is where the Barbados Olympic Association comes in all the time, every 4 years. As mentioned, Burke, who's the chef de mission, he's off to Paris as of today, preparing for the team to arrive at the Games. Now, persons hear the term chef de mission. You yourself would have functioned in that capacity in a number of the international competitions. What is the role like for the chef, and what can Cami expect to be doing in preparation as well as during the Games for Team Barbados?
Well, each games is different. It comes with its own challenges because, as you can imagine, each country has their own laws, their rules, their regulations. The organizing committee for each game will do things to the best of their ability and based on the budgets that they were given by the government of the day. The chef de mission's role is, as it suggests, he or she is in charge of everything games related for Team Barbados. Travel, accommodation, meals, transport, medical, all the functional areas, doping control, everything.
So I can say in Barbados parlance, the chief cook and bottle washer for Team Barbados is the chef de mission.
Yes.
Now, also too, I'm going to throw this one out to Dr. Caddle. Dr. Caddle, I almost would say track and field has shareholdership in the Barbados Olympic team from the beginning. Obviously, track and field is also the sport that we do have. I'm going to say 2 Olympic medals. Of course, James Wedburn at the time under the West Indies Federation, and then Obadele Thompson. Again, you have representation. I think Sade was a given, but then in the late stages, Tristan came into play due to her world ranking. How do you feel as an association, again, being able to field 2 teams at these elite games?
Well, we do have 2 outstanding world ranked athletes. That must be said in any case. The regulations, as Gail mentioned, differ. So this time around, um, the athletes who we were tracking, and we had the expectation of about 5, 6 athletes making it. But the ones we were tracking were still ranked in the top 100. But this time around, that was not enough. They set some standards for the numbers of athletes they were expecting per events. So, for example, in the 400 meters, they topped that off at 40, and in the some of the other events, they topped off at 56. So at 56, we were watching the rankings as they went up to make sure that we at least could secure a place or two. And what did help was the fact that there were only 3 per country allowed. So even though some of the athletes were ranked higher, of course, they would have been 5 or 6 down with the countries who had a lot of depth in the particular events. So that is how we were able then to take advantage of our top ranked athletes and have the 2 outstanding young women make the team. And we're pleased with this.
And for me, I'm going to slide in Mr. Jules here because you mentioned that there were world rankings, that we had athletes within the top 100 that we would have expected to make the
Yes.
team. But one of the major talking points among the track and field fraternities that maybe the standards were a little high this year for the Olympic Games. Mr. Jules, I'm going to let you weigh in here. Dr. Caddle was alluded to the fact that we had athletes performing at that level, but then not making the cut at the end of the day because of the standards. What is your thoughts on how the selection was done this time for the Olympic Games in Paris?
Yes, I do agree with Dr. Caddle. The World Athletics, they made a decision to start reducing the number of athletes who would be advancing to the Olympic Games. And I think athletes knew that this would be a little difficult for them, and therefore they needed to step up in their performances. Some people started out quite well, and as you can see, quite recently, we had some great performances coming from athletes. One to note is actually in the women's 400 meters, Salwa Ed Nasser from Bahrain. She was on the doping. She was out for about 2 years on a doping suspension, and she came back and she's actually in there now, and one that I will be keeping my eyes on. So yes, having the standards so rigid, I think athletes needed to rise to the occasion.
Okay, now we're going to go back to the discussion of qualification, but I want to slide in Robert here. Robert, just like track and field, swimming within the past few Olympiads has been able to field at least one or two swimmers. This year you have Jack Kirby coming in. Jack, again, coming in as a late entry, but nevertheless, he's there. What is your
Yes.
position from the association point of view to know that yet again you can have an Olympian?
Yes, we are extremely proud of the achievement to have Jack on the team this year. We would have loved to have at least two, a male, one female. However, as Dr. Caddle alluded, um, there were some changes this year that in terms of standards, higher standards, and that prevented the two athletes.
Now, Gail, preparation for the team, people usually think it just starts about a few weeks before, but I know the team goes through a lot more than just being prepared for the games physically and in terms of their discipline. But the BOA also instills other training programs for them. What are the other training programs in the lead up to the Olympic Games? I know people think it begins a year before or a few months before, but it begins at the end of every Olympiad into the 4 year period. So, what is it like?
Yes. Actually, no, we are looking forward. We're looking towards Los Angeles 2028. As soon as this one finishes, Olympic Solidarity will start put in place their programs to assist the athletes with funding for the next 4 years. Um, and for us, coming out of COVID, as you would remember, Tokyo was held 2 years after the actual event was planned. And so Paris kind of came like really quickly behind that because it's like just a 2 year span. But as soon as Tokyo was finishing up, we were headlong into preparations for Paris. Um, the athletes, as you would know, have been training and trying very hard to make their qualifying standards. As we speak, actually, two of the athletes arrived in their training camps today. I was just on the phone with France because Jack Kirby, he just arrived at his training camp in Mohouse. His flight was late, so we had to make changes to his flight in London. So the coach ended up going ahead of him. The coach got there about 11:30, and Jack got there just about 20 minutes ago. And this is on Paris time, so you do the 6 hour time difference. Tristan arrived in Venice, Italy, about 2 hours ago, and she is going to be there training with Shade up until I think the 25th of this month before she then heads off to the village. So the athletes are definitely doing their best. There's a lot of training going on. Matthew is right now doing his final preparation and training as well. So it's not an easy road for them. Most people think that they just get up 6 months or 8 months before major games. There's a lot of preparation, a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, and a lot of funding that goes into the preparation for the athletes.
I'm glad you mentioned funding and preparation, and this is where I go to Dr. Caddle. Dr. Caddle, what is it like in terms of getting a track and field athlete to that elite stage? I know we do have the big elephant in the room, which is we do not have a national stadium, but outside of that, it goes beyond that. There's a lot more that you have to invest to get an athlete to this elite level. So, what would you say it takes for us to get Olympians to be a Shade Williams, to be a Obadele Thompson, to be an Andrea Blackett? What does it take to get an athlete there?
So you're saying that you want to see more Obas, more Shades at the top of the game, in there with the medals, obviously world ranked and with other people aspiring to be like them. By the same token, then we have to invest at different levels. So for the grassroots, we are actively within the World Athletics program, where the investment goes into the athletes, the run, jump, throw, athlete preparation. So this year, we will have at least one person qualifying to go to the trainers preparation camp, in which they will have the opportunity then to come back to Barbados and share that knowledge with other coaches who would have contact with the young athletes. So that's at one level. So we need to put some funding into that. Of course, attractive facilities um, draw people. Draw. We're talking about young people full of energy in a very highly stimulated world where there's lights and color. So the attractive facility that is fit for purpose would be perfect. And we're really, really looking forward to that. And we really do think, yes, that will contribute to the next group of Olympians, right? We do have some really good people with OLY behind their names, and that cannot be discounted. We had people like Shane Bradford. We were looking at Rasheen Griffith, Tia Dana Bell. These are people who are at the level. So some investment needs to go back into those who are on the crest, and about to break through up into the world level, so that they can be counted and be within the 56 or within the 40 as World Athletics determines. So that money has to go in there. So it's facilities, and we need to look at opportunities for training. The big challenge for us, because of where we're situated, is access to competition.
Right.
We do have some very well trained, highly trained, really good coaches who do their best. We have some good programs within the clubs. Of course, we can put some more money in there to strengthen that club program. So we have those feeder programs, and we're concentrating on tackling it from those ends. We have a lot of athletes whose objective is to go to the United States and benefit from that intercollegiate program. They have competition just about every week, and that tends to bring them on, along with some better facilities in some instances, and a total difference in environment.
Right.
So we need then, that kind of takes care of itself, and that is an investment that comes to us, because the value of those scholarships is really great. If we were to count the amount of money that is worth, we would have to be able to put that in the coffers, and we'd be doing really well. So at the level then of people who have determined that track and field is their career, and they need to make money, they need to live off that, then they have to be at the level that they can attract the type of sponsorship that will take care of all their needs: competition needs, medical needs, living, housing, all the welfare things. And we do have to spend money in other programs like safeguarding, anti-doping education. So it is, there are a lot of aspects. And we look, when we do our strategic planning, we look at all those aspects and determine, should we get access to the funding. Well, we would then reprioritize and make sure that we can support all those different needs. And of course, you'll see more LOLYs.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Caddle. We're going to stick a pin here in our discussion, and when we return, we continue to talk about Paris 2024 and Team Barbados, as we are just 12 days away from the 2024 Olympic Games. And welcome back to the People's Business, where tonight's topic we're looking at Team Barbados as we prepare for the 2024 Olympic Games. In our prior discussion, Dr. Caddle would have spoken about what track and field needs to do to ensure that they do have not only elite athletes, but a succession plan in place that gives us the leverage to actually have athletes at that highest level. This is where I go to Robert now in swimming. Robert, what is your take on what you need? I do know at the junior level, Carifta, you can see that you're reaping the rewards there. And how do you do to have a feeder program from there to ensure that you can get swimmers to the elite level and continue to produce Olympians in your sport?
Well, for us, we believe that we need to get more of our senior swimmers when they leave the curricular level and the age group level into the colleges and into competition at the highest level, NCAA, and so on. That helps with their development, swimming against the best swimmers in the world during in that college system, getting them the opportunity to swim at world competition, world championships, and so on. So to sharpen their skills in preparation for Olympics. At the lower level, we need to get more people into swimming by developing more learn to swim programs and making sure that persons transition from learn to swim into competitive swimming. A lot of people in this generation just as a life skill, and we need to get more people into competitive swimming.
Okay, now we're going to open the lines as well to you viewers out there if you want to weigh in on our discussion. The actual numbers to call are 228-5562 and 228-5563 if you want to join our discussion. Now I'm going to also get into the meat of the matter with you, Mr. Jules. Now we're focusing on track and field. We have swimming. We also have triathlon, and we heard from Matthew Wright in a few, which is our Olympian who will be competing in that discipline. But generally, it is a small team. It is one of the smaller teams we've fielded in quite a while. What does that say about sport as a whole in Barbados? I know we focus predominantly on what are our key sports, but we do still have disciplines out there that are Olympic disciplines and not being represented.
Since COVID, it has been a kind of hard road for sports teams. And we are now seeing things starting to come back on. In track and field, we had missed the Carifta games for a while. And there were some other disciplines where nothing wasn't really happening. So I believe that we are now starting to see things develop once again. And you talked about the 28 Olympic Games, and I'm sure Gail will mention that cricket is supposed to be played at the 2028 Olympic Games. We are 4 years away from that, so we'll see how things will pan out with the different national teams trying to qualify for the 2028 Olympics. But I believe that we will see things starting to pick up over the next couple of years as national associations see the avenues opening up for teams to participate, etc. I think we will see things start to pick up.
Okay, now we do have a caller. Good evening to you. You're joining our discussion. We're talking about Paris 2024. Good evening.
Yes, hi, great evening. How are you doing?
I'm fine, thank you. And you?
Oh, glad to hear that's wonderful. Great Parker and great responsibility. You're responsible for this call. Let me thank the production team for taking my call. I have a couple of questions for the panel there, Ms. Burke. Yes, the first question is for Captain Michael Jules, and good night to you, sir.
Good night. How are you?
Yes, good night. Yes, I'm fine. Thank you very much. Just asking here, now the future looks very bright for Barbados in terms of, you would have just mentioned the 2028 cricket. In terms of our cricket team, Barbados looks very prosperous. We could get some medals there in terms of cricket for the 2028 Olympics, and the future obviously looks very bright because we have juniors, yes, as well in terms of the Heidi Stout in swimming. that's another discipline that we can have a lot more medals there for. And this has been something that has captured us for a long time because we've not been able to do very well, but now we have the opportunity to do very well, even this year with Sade. So my first question, I have one more. What would a bronze medal be like for Barbados now at this time, Captain Jules? What would a bronze medal mean to us in terms of Barbados not having a national stadium, in terms of Barbados not having all of these drawbacks, COVID and the hurricane that just hit us? What would a bronze medal mean to us now? I have a second question for Dr. Caddle when you're finished, please.
Okay, well, let me try to answer that first question. I
Well,
think
thank you.
regardless of COVID or whatever, a bronze medal would be significant for Barbados. I also want to make this point, though, that all of the athletes who have done extremely well at the Olympic Games, Commonwealth, etc., their training, they were based overseas. So when people talk about facilities, there is a need for us to have facilities at a higher level than what we have in Barbados right now. And that's the reason why the athletes go overseas, to where they can access facilities, where they can access a higher level of services. So, but to answer your question, I believe that a bronze medal will definitely put Barbados on a high.
That would be brilliant. It would be fantastic, out of this world. And Dr. Thank you so much. Dr. Caddle, good night to you, ma'am. Yes, I have a question for you. In terms of the qualifications to the Olympics and the standards being very high this year, and we would note that, God forbid, we wouldn't want any injuries to the athletes, because we would have seen that when the standards were even higher with Usain Bolt, being injured in his last race. Very sad. What are we doing to safeguard our future for the Barbadian athletes in terms of the lack of injuries, in terms of being bolstered for better nutrition, in terms of being bolstered for a better standard of qualification, as the standard of qualifications get even higher than the standard of Usain Bolt in his time back in 2008 for that Olympics period? Thank you.
Thanks for your question. Interestingly enough, whenever we prepare a team, a junior team, the youth team, CRIFTA team, Olympics team, there are always educational components included. So from the time the athlete starts to approach national level, at whatever age, they would have been exposed to information and access to tools for proper nutrition, for protection from injury. We try as far as possible, to travel with a physiotherapist, a massage therapist, and a doctor wherever that is possible. And if that is not possible, we'll go with the physio, because the physio is able to, on the spot, deal with the recovery, deal with things with like lymphatic drainage and all those kind of things, which sometimes the massage therapist will be tasked to do. So we try to ensure that we protect the athletes. Of course, they are out there exerting themselves, trying their very hardest, training. They still use all their muscles to the largest extent on behalf of the country. And when they step off the track, we are there to hold them. They make sure they get the ice baths and the massages, the whatever stimulation they need. That is done in the safest way possible. And from the Athletics Association point of view, we ensure that is done for all our teams that travel. At least one person representing medical personnel.
And I just want to weigh in and say that happens right across the board, Dr. Caddle, where it is a mandatory really at the international games to have that. So if the caller had a concern, it's mandatory that we cover all bases to ensure that our athletes are at their peak. So thank you so much, caller. We do have another call. Good evening, and thank you for joining our discussion. Hello, good evening.
Yeah, good evening, the Randy and the panel.
Good evening, and it's Anne-Marie.
Good evening.
Anne-Marie, sorry about that. Yeah, to you and the panel. First thing, we have to find out what the Jamaicans are doing, and then we have to get more serious at sport and start making sport.
I want you to expand on that statement, please. When you say to stop making sport at sport, expand a bit
But
more on what do you mean
we
by
made
that. Wall, you're throwing it at us, so let me get that expansion, please.
right. We wait till our athletes do good and then bump up the place, and we don't um pick them up from early, like when they leave the BSAC and thing, and give them the sufficient nutrition and really look after our police and things. We only look after our police after they do well. So
Well,
that
let me
way
throw
we
that
stop
one at
making
Gail.
stop.
Gail, let me throw that one at you because obviously the BOA has that management at some point in time with these national teams. What do you think about what the caller just said about being proactive and not
Well,
reactive and not proactive?
well, I think the BOA and all the national federations, we all put our best foot forward, and we really go above and beyond for the athletes. We don't just wait until they medal or they do well and come back home and then recognize them, or we then try throwing money behind them after the fact. We and when I say we, I mean the BOA and the national federations. We really try and put measures in place for our athletes. Apart from funding, there's the mental preparation, there's the training, um, etc. for all of the athletes. One thing I must say though, that what people need to realize is we live on an island. Anytime that we need to send an athlete somewhere, the first thing we need to look for is an airfare. Airfare from Barbados to St. Lucia, St. Vincent, Trinidad, it's going to cost you. On top of that, you're going to have to find accommodation for the athlete and an official, whether that is the coach, manager, doctor, physio, massage therapist, and that goes for all the sports. So, in saying that, I'm saying that yes, we do put measures in place ahead of time before our athletes medal or they do really well at regional or international meets.
So we do have that proactive approach. Yes, I do agree with that
Yes,
to that
we
point.
do.
Okay, we're going to take a break here again and we return in just a few. We're watching the People's Business and we're talking about Paris 2024 Team Barbados. Now, if you have just joined us, this is the People's Business, where tonight we're talking sports, in particular Paris 2024 Team Barbados. Our guest and our panel tonight, Gail Greg Archer. She is the Senior Office Administrator at the Barbados Olympic Association. Dr. June Caddle, Second Vice President of the Athletics Association of Barbados. We have Mr. Robert Armstrong, he's the President of the Barbados Aquatics Sports Association, and Mr. Michael Jules, who is our track and field analyst. Now, as I would have mentioned before, we have 4 athletes competing at the Games for Barbados in track and field: Shade Williams and Tristan Eveling. We have swimmer Jack Kirby and Matthew Wright in triathlon. And earlier, Matthew Wright would have sat down with our very own Anmar Goodrich Boyce to talk about his preparation ahead of the Games. And here now is Matthew's take on how he is ready for Paris 2024.
I will be actually an Olympian come July 27th.
Yeah, no, I think it's now starting to really sink in. Now we're getting closer to the Games. You know, as you said, our team was finally announced a few days ago, and yeah, obviously I knew I was qualified probably for a good almost 2 months now, which has been great. Obviously for me to prepare, you know, get everything organized ahead of time. You know, I feel, you know, some of the track athletes and stuff only had their nationals like last week, so you know it's very late knowing. But I think now we're getting close. It's really, I definitely get it. You know, I catch myself on the odd training session when I'm above my okay, what it's gonna be like. You know, racing in the middle of Paris with all my family and my friends watching and screaming at me, and as you said, representing your country and fulfilling my lifelong dream. And it's just, this is the epitome, isn't it? Like there's no higher height than going to the Olympics in sport.
Yeah, tell me now about your training. Has that changed in the lead up to the Paris Games?
It hasn't changed drastically. We've changed the structure just a little bit as the game. My race is going to be on a Tuesday, while usually I tend to race on a weekend in a normal season. So we've kind of readjusted the week a bit so that I can get as much training in as possible and be ready for a Tuesday race as opposed to usually a Saturday race. So it's probably more a touch change in schedule. But I think the content of what I'm doing is pretty similar. I think a lot of the advice I was given, you know, last year when I was close to qualifying was don't go there and try to rewrite the script, you know, do what you were doing at this level. Because I think a lot of people, obviously you're trying to do things to fine tune everything and be as best as you can. But, you know, as you say, a lot of people try to get just that bit too far and end up, you know, either getting sick or getting injured before the game. So we're really kind of aware of that. So we're trying to keep it almost as normal as I'm used to. But at the same time, we're just trying to push it that little few percent more so that I make sure I'm in my, you know, career best fitness come July 30th.
Tell me what your goals for the triathlon in Paris.
Yeah, so I think overall, I'm capable of a top 20. Of course, you're always trying to hang your hat on the magic of the Olympics and hope that you could maybe have an even better performance. But I think what we've shown in the last year, and based on the guys I'm going to go against, I think top 20 is very possible. But overall, how I want to race strong from the front, I want to have a good swim. You know, they might potentially be a breakaway from the swim. You know, the French guys aren't the quickest runners, but if they want to get a medal, they need to kind of break away from the quicker runners. And so I think they're going to push the swim and the bike really hard. And I would love to be at the front with those guys, you know, pushing the swim and the bike and then being able to hang on as best I can in the run. Because these guys nowadays are running super fast. You know, they're running 29 flat for 10K off of the bike. And, you know, for me, I'm more of a 31 flat kind of 10K guy. So I know I don't have the run speed of the crazy runners. So if we can get out in front on the bike, that gives me a better chance to have a much better race. But yeah, so that's the plan, to race hard, hopefully race at the front so we can, you know, everyone back home can see the yellow suit up front for as long as possible. And obviously I'm gonna fight all the way to the end.
So as you just heard, that is Matthew Wright. He is going to be representing Barbados in triathlon at the Paris Olympic Games. Mr. Jules, listening to Matthew just now, he would have mentioned wanting to finish in the top 20. I know the aim quite often is to get on the podium. Every athlete wants to get on the podium at the pinnacle, most importantly. However, these athletes, these four athletes, would have reached their pinnacle in their sport to actually get to the level to be representing the island. What would you say to those athletes, those four athletes, as they go into the Olympic Games?
Well, definitely for each athlete, I believe that them and the coaches would have set goals. And one of the major goals would be obviously to make it to the Olympics. And then what is the next goal once you make it to the Olympic Games? I think Matthew is quite clear on what he wants to achieve. For Sade Williams, I believe that her goal will be to make it into the final, and I'm quite sure that she can do so based on how things have been going. She has been improving. She had a 49.80, which was her best time for the season, and that was in June. And I believe that her goal will be to advance to the final. So I do believe that each of these athletes and their coaching staff, management teams have set some specific goals. And one of the things about setting goals is the goals must be realistic. So it would not be fair to either the coach or the athletes, also to the public, to say an athlete is going to make it to a final when we already know where they stand in terms of their performance.
Yes.
So again, top 20 for Matthew Wright. I think that's a realistic goal for him. For Kirby, it might be the same thing to finish in the top 20 in his event. It's going to be a little tough for Tristan Evelyn, but I believe the goal for her may be to get out of that first round and see where she goes. Her last outing at the Olympics, she only made it. She only had one run, and that was in the first round. So I think a realistic goal for her would be to get out of the first round and proceed. And the thing about goal setting is once you make it, once you have met that goal, then you can start going again and setting another goal. So that's what I would say in terms of these four athletes.
And Robert, I'm going to throw at you. Of course, I'm going to let you focus a bit more on Jack in terms of his goal. He's going to compete in the 100-meter freestyle, and that is one of the more competitive events within the swimming program. What do you think of his chances in that event?
Well, Jack is a very very 100 free swimmer. He actually now broke his own record in 100 free in April at the Bahamas Nationals, achieving a time of 49.31. Before he held that record, 49.78. So he's lowering his time each time he swims. He's pushing to do better. I believe that his goal will be to make the semifinals and then the finals if possible. If he does make the semifinal, he would possibly end up in finishing the top 20, hopefully.
Okay, now for you, Dr. Caddle, do you think Sade gets that extra pressure because Barbados she carries the weight really of the team in Paris, as with the expectancy that she will make that podium?
This presently, Sade is ranked fourth in the world in her event, the 400 meters. So she's not to carry any weight. She is to look at her race and avoid any errors. That's all she has to do. Just run errors free, just stick to the plan. And she's a very serious, talented athlete, very serious in her approach. She takes care of all the things that she needs to take care of. So what we do as a team is ensure that we stay together and manage any little challenges that come up in between. So realistically, when you're in the first four, when you're number four in the world, there's there are always things that are possible. So she just needs to ensure that she doesn't make any errors in the early stage, or when she makes the errors, recovers from them fully, show the resilience that we know Barbadians have, and keep trudging on. Because as long as you're in that final eight, anything can happen. And when you're a Bajan, things happen. Things happen.
I agree with you. Gail, from your end, you spoke briefly about the logistical part of getting the athletes into Paris. Of course, there's acclimatization. And we see the athletes coming in pretty early, 12 days out, and you already said Tristan is in Europe as already, Shade is in Europe already, Jack arrived today. Matthew is based in the UK, so he's just going to go over to France. But how important is it for the athletes to get over to that area or to that place, the place where they're actually going to compete, so they can acclimatize in time for their events?
Yeah, it's very important for them. Like June's technical meeting is on the 25th for track and field. So after her technical meeting and after swimming's technical meeting, they will then go to the actual competition venue. And there are some athletes like Shade is on the world stage, so she might be more comfortable um, looking up from the blocks and seeing 75,000 people. But for another athlete, looking around at such a huge stadium, it might play a little havoc on their mental preparation and their psyche. So it's important that the athletes going early, they see what their training venue is like. They go to the competition venue. They get familiar with the call room, what they need to do, where they need to be. They need to have their accreditation with them at all times. Things like that, so that on the day of competition, it it's not new to them, and they're not in a panic. They would know what bus they need to get from the village to the competition venue. They would know how long it takes them to get there. They'll know where to actually go pick up the bus. So that's why we always encourage the athletes to arrive maybe like 5 days before the actual event, so that they'll iron out all of these little kinks.
Okay, now we do have a caller. Someone wants to weigh in on our discussion. Good evening to you.
Good evening to the panel.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm listening to the panel there, but I'm a little disappointed that this time around we are sending athletes to Paris, because we all know Tristan cannot beat nobody in that 100 meters. She can't beat the Jamaicans, she can't beat the Trinidadians, she can't beat the British, and she can't beat the Americans. So it's a waste of time. I think this time, what we should have done is that we should have hold back athletes for Paris this time around. Look at our chance on the BSAP and mold them and see if we can have some of them for the next Olympics in that 4 years. But right now we're wasting money right now, then people. Yes, Shade is our best bet, but to send athletes to Paris, we know we can hold blows.
I want to weigh in on this one, then I'll allow the other panel to weigh in on it as well. I think the aim of the Olympic Games, and I think it comes in the mandate of the Olympic Games, is not that an athlete just gets there to medal. You are at the peak of your sport when you become an Olympian. There's standards that are set. I don't believe we should degrade any athlete that reaches that pinnacle of a standard to say, oh, they're going and it's a waste of money. It's never a waste of money. In sport, you do have to have a winner, you do have to have a loser. By the end of the day, everybody's a winner when they reach that pinnacle to go to the Olympic Games, which is the peak of any sport across those disciplines. I'm not going to open it to the panel to respond to the caller. I think because he mentioned specifically track and field, Mr. Jules, maybe you would like to take that lead from me in that regard.
Not a problem. All I would say to the caller is they and you alluded to it. There are qualifying standards. Once an athlete reaches and surpasses the qualifying standards, that athlete is eligible to go to the Olympic Games. The same thing applies for Commonwealth Games and for several other games. Once the athlete gets there, we don't know what's going to happen.
True. True.
I mean, case in point, there was an athlete from Canada called Perdita Felician, and she was ranked number one in the world going into the Olympic Games. And guess what? She did not medal. She did not even make it past the first round.
I also
So that
want
opened up a space for another athlete to get into the final and actually to get a medal. So to say that an athlete qualifies and you don't give them that opportunity, then that's not a good thing at all, sir. So I think all of the national associations are on the same page in that regard. Once an athlete reaches the qualifying standard, they have the opportunity to go and represent the country.
I do agree. And also to a representing the country, gaining that experience will help to build their momentum, not only for the Olympics, but for other international competitions as well. We're going to take a break yet again and return here on our discussion on Paris 2024 and Team Barbados. And welcome back to the People's Business. Tonight we're talking sports, in particular Paris 2024. We're going to take one final caller. Good evening.
Hi, good evening. How are you doing?
I'm fine, thank you. And
Welcome
you?
to all the panel. I tend to go with what the gentleman said just now. As a matter of fact, sometimes I tend to think the problem is not the athletes, the problem is the people that send them.
And how so, may I answer? Oh, actually, he has. The caller is gone. I don't think we're going to even entertain that because it goes on the same vein as the previous caller. But never to say the less, we do have a team of 5 athletes set to represent Barbados. And as at this stage, we're going to do our final wrap. I'm going to start with you, Dr. Caddle. You have 2 athletes representing your sport, track and field. What do you say to the public to support Sade and Tristan?
I just want to reiterate that we have 2 excellent women in sport, such role models for the young ladies that are Barbadian and from across the Caribbean. The Caribbean has been doing a fantastic job with female athletics. Barbados is up front there with it, right? Tristan is not at the same level as Shadi at the moment. All it takes is good race, one good race, and her rating goes all the way up. She has been trying, she has been faithful, she has worked hard, she has sacrificed, she is following her dual career where she has academic goals as well as sporting athletic goals. And she has been faithful in all this. And I think she's an excellent investment at this time. 26 years old, 25 years old. She has another Olympics behind her. And I think that all the Barbadians need to do is put as much Bajan energy, positive Bajan energy, because we have the other kind. We heard it. But positive Bajan energy. We want every ounce of positive Bajan energy behind those athletes. They're just too one chance at a time, one step at a time. Can you not support them all the way? I am willing to support them fully all the way. And their best effort is well done for me. And we expect the best from them. And we know they'll give us all they have. I've seen it before, I've been there before, and I don't know who hasn't been there. But you need to be there when the athlete gives everything they have for this ultramarine and gold. So you better keep your comments positive. You better be encouraging. And if it doesn't go well, you better help to dust them off and get them ready for the next one. Because we're competitive.
I
We're
agree.
competitive. We're not going there. We are competitors on the front line, leading things. Get that get that as part of your psyche and give us all the energy, all the positive energy you have, all the positive comments. We don't want to destroy athletes, we want to build them. And we want to show the young athletes who are on the crest that it is worth it to put the effort in, that people will support them, that even when things don't go well, that they will get that support to help them to make the next step and another opportunity for success on the world stage. That's where we're going. We've been there before, we've done it before, we've had world champions, we've had Olympic medals, we've got Commonwealth champions. This is the same people, born and bred right here with all positive energy. Keep it up, people. We
Yes,
appreciate it.
I do
The
agree.
Athletics Association, we spend many, many hours preparing, having meetings, hosting meets, being there for them, and the whole athletic fraternity, parents and everything. We know, we know what we put into it,
I
and
do
we know what
agree.
the athletes put into it.
Yes,
Help them. That's
yes.
all we're asking you.
I agree with you,
Help them.
Dr. Caddle. Definitely keeping it positive. And for you, Robert, as Sade and Tristan set to lay all on the track, for Jack, he set to lay all in the water in the pool.
Yes, the Barbados Aquatic Sports so Central are full support behind Jack. Jack, in my mind, I always think of him like a pit bull in the water. If he's a fighter, he's not going to go there and just go through emotions. He's going to go there. He's going to be competitive. He's going to do his best that he can do on the day. And I encourage every Barbadian, locally and abroad, to put their full support behind him. Show your support in your homes while you're cheering out the race. Show your support media. Get out there that we are behind our athletes. We are behind our team Barbados. We expect good things from great things from Jack, and we look forward to the results.
Thank you so much. And Gail, I'm going to let you speak on behalf of Matthew. Matthew's journey was a long one, but definitely rewarding for him.
Yeah, Matthew um, has come a long way. He fought hard for the 2022 Tokyo, but that didn't work out for him. But now he is here. He is doing his best, and I know he will do his best to make it into that top 20. For all the other athletes, Jack, Shade, Tristan, I echo what both Dr. Caddle and Robert said. The athletes need our support. We don't just wait until something exciting happens and we all rush to the airport and we do a motorcade. We don't we don't need that. We need your moral and your spiritual and every kind of support behind these athletes right now. It's very hard for an athlete to go out there, not do well, and then because June, Dr. Cattle will tell you, it is very depressing for them. They feel as though they've let the whole country down, and it's difficult trying to pull them back from that state of mind. So we don't need the negative energy. We need all the positive energy for these athletes, and I'm hoping that Barbados throws all their weight and support behind them.
Thank you so much, Mr. Jules. I want you to wrap it up in one sentence as we're counting down the clock. One sentence. Wrap it all up for us.
So all of these athletes have qualified. They have the right to be there at the Olympic Games to represent Barbados. And I would like all of Barbados to rally around these 4 athletes, wear our blue, yellow, and black, and give them our fullest support.
Thank you so much. Could it be better said by my panel? I just want to, before I go, let you know the actual schedule for our athletes. A first person out will be Matthew on July 30th, the triathlon. On that same day, July 30th, Jack will also be in the pool for the opening rounds of the 100-meter freestyle. And then on August 2nd, which will be the second day of the track and field program, Tristan has her first round in the 100 meters. And then Shade will hit the track on August 5th for the first round of the women's 400 meters. Thank you so much to my panel, Dr. Caddle, Gail, Craig Archer, we have Mr. Jules, as well as Robert Armstrong, and also to Matthew Wright, who would have previously been interviewed by Anne Margaret Rich Voice. He was hard at training, and he gave us that little blight to ensure that he can let Barbadians know that he's putting his best foot forward in terms of representing the country. And I also echo the words of my panel to say, let us rally around Team Barbados. It's a small unit, but nevertheless, when they walk through the stadium, they are going to be representing the country. Gail, who's that flag bearer for us for the opening ceremony?
Well, our flag bearer is actually Jack and Shade.
Right, Jack and Shade will be the flag bearer. So yes, so you see them on the opening day for the opening ceremony. Thank you so much for joining us. Also to the callers who joined our discussion. This has been The People's Business, where we spoke about Paris 2024. I'm Team Barbados. I'm Anne-Marie Burke. Good evening.